Good morning. This is December 11th, 2014. We are at the JCC in Dallas doing an interview with Mr. Simmie Cooper for the Roots to Boots project for the Dallas Jewish Historical Society. I'd like to welcome you, Simmie, to the project, and I'd like to start first by asking you to tell us a little bit about the arrival of your personal family to South Africa, perhaps starting with I would imagine with your grandparents, and how they got to South Africa, where they came from.
So my father's side of the family is from Russia. They came from Lithuania. And my mother's side of the family came from England.
And when did they come, and for what reasons?
So obviously the persecution of the Jews brought my father's father to South Africa. He was one of 13 children that immigrated. Him and one brother came to South Africa, and the rest went to either the United States or Canada. I'm not actually sure how my mother's side got to South Africa.
Do you know what years they came?
I'm not sure, no.
And when your grandparents came, what professions were they in?
So my father's father was a tram driver in Johannesburg. And I'm not sure, again, from my mother's side, what her father did.
Do you know where did your mother's side of the family reside?
So my mother was from Cape Town. Her family was from Cape Town. I believe that her family was part of a department store called Woolworths that was in South Africa.
How did your parents meet?
My parents met in an elevator. They were staying in the same apartment building where my father and my mother lived with her mother. My mother's parents were divorced.
And what city was that in?
That was in Johannesburg.
And what year?
Well, my parents were married for, my father passed away 2 years ago, but they were married for, it would be 56 years this year.
So what city were they in when they married?
Johannesburg.
And what was your father's profession?
My father was an attorney in South Africa. My father was graduated from the University of Witwatersrand when he was the youngest graduate in his class, and he graduated with the highest marks in the whole of the university that year.
What do you think were his motivations to be such a good student?
You know, my father came from really bare beginnings. His mother died before I was born. His father was a very hard-working individual. Most probably they never had much growing up. So I'm sure he was, driven to make a better life for himself.
What type of law did he practice?
My father was in litigation. He practiced all sorts of law. My father was actually one of the attorneys in the Rivonia trial, where Nelson Mandela was convicted along with a bunch of other people, of trying to overthrow the South African government. And my father represented an individual that was the only individual that got acquitted in that whole trial.
Really?
Yes.
That must have been exciting times in your household.
Yes, it really was.
Did you did your family at any time during that period feel threatened because of your father's activities?
I don't believe so. Not then. We surely didn't feel it at that time.
Was your mother a home keeper or a housekeeper, or I don't mean housekeeper, but I mean, was she a homebody, or did she also have a profession?
No, my mother strictly dedicated herself to raising 4 kids.
4 children. So tell me about your siblings.
So I have an older brother, Gary, that actually resides here in Dallas as well. I have a older sister, Beverly, who lives in Los Angeles, and I have a younger sister, Tracy, who also resides here in Dallas.
And going to school, did you grow up in Johannesburg the whole time?
So I grew up in Johannesburg, and actually my parents immigrated in my final year of high school, which was matric, when I was in South Africa. And I finished school, finished getting my matriculation in Johannesburg, and then I immigrated to Los Angeles.
Tell me about your schooling experience in Johannesburg. What type of a school did you go to?
So I went to, schooling system's a little bit different in South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have junior, middle, high school. We basically have a junior school, and then I guess you go into high school. I had a great schooling experience. I ended up in Johannesburg at a Jewish day school, which was called King David,
Mm-hmm.
where I finished my high school experience. And actually went back in 2012, which is the first time I went back to South Africa since 1976, and visited my old headmaster,
Wow.
which was a great experience.
So was it a Zionistic school?
Yes, very much so.
Were you involved in after-school activities of a Zionist nature?
I wouldn't say so, no. I wasn't.
Did you ever think about, when you were a child, did you ever think about going to Israel?
I actually, I did, and when I graduated from college in Los Angeles, I actually spent 3 or 4 months in Israel on a kibbutz.
So in the Jewish day school, was it a dual curriculum, both Hebrew and secular studies?
It was. I only came in my last 2 years, so I didn't take Hebrew.
You did not.
I transferred from another high school.
So you say you moved to Los Angeles and when you were a youth. What was your parents' motivation for leaving the country at that point?
My father was, because he was involved in the Rivonia trial, and my father knew Nelson Mandela. Mandela was an attorney as well. They articled together, and we immigrated in 1976. In 1973, 74, my father really saw the writing on the wall, and he knew that there wasn't going to be much of a future left in South Africa. And we actually applied for our green card starting in about the end of 1973, and we got our green cards in 76, and that's when we immigrated.
How did the family choose Los Angeles?
My father had originally bought a business in Chicago, and the weather was so cold that he said, I don't want to live like this. So he knew people in Los Angeles, and liked Los Angeles, and I guess was happy moving there.
So when you say he bought a business, it was not his intention to go on as a lawyer? He wanted to do something else?
His intention was to practice law, but when he came to LA and he was going to restudy for the board exams, it was just too much. It was also trying times. When we immigrated in 1976, you couldn't get your money out of South Africa.
Right.
You basically were restricted to living on your interest income only, and your money was really frozen. So you had to really, support a family, start a life, find other, opportunities to make money.
So what did your father do at that time?
So my father got into real estate, which he was also actively involved in real estate in South Africa, but got into it in a pretty big way.
When you say big way,
Full-time.
was he a developer or?
Developer, yes.
And then what was your life like in South Africa as a young man?
We had a great time growing up. South Africa was when I grew up, it was it was a great place to live. I mean, you know, you didn't really think about, as a young kid, you didn't think about the politics. You know, we weren't short of anything. We had a good quality of life.
And when you went to Los Angeles, what was the comparison?
It was a major culture shock, coming from, you know, a place where, you know, the government was very, very controlling in South Africa when I was there. Playboys were banned. Guess Who's Coming for Dinner, which was a movie with Sidney Poitier, was banned. So it was, you know, coming into you know, this big city that, you know, everything was out there, no restrictions, and, you know, tremendous opportunity we saw as well.
What type of a school did you go to when you went to Los Angeles, and what part of the city did you live in?
So when we originally moved to Los Angeles, we lived in Bel Air, and then from there we moved into Beverly Hills, and I went to USC.
So you had finished high school then?
Yes, I stayed and finished my high school in South Africa, and then came to the States and went to USC.
So no, I know the city quite well, so you really were living a pretty privileged life at the point that you were in Los Angeles, in terms of the neighborhood you lived
Yes,
in and the
no
school that
question.
you went to.
Yeah.
So, given that you were living a privileged life in terms of the neighborhood and the school and the freedoms, did you feel, how did you manage to kind of keep yourself under control and pay attention to your studies, given that all of that was there for the taking?
You know, I was going to USC, which was a private school at
Yes.
that time, and it was expensive, and, you know, it was still challenging for my father to afford to pay for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually did my college degree in 3 years.
Oh,
I went to
wow,
summer school, graduated with a CPA degree, and actually took my board exams in my final semester. So, you know, even so it was all out there, we were still very cognizant of the fact that, you know, my father was still working hard, he was still trying to provide for us, and you know, it was, yes, we were living a great privileged life, but, you know, we didn't take it much for granted.
That's terrific. 3 years at USC and with a CPA, that's incredible. That's incredible. So did you go to work in Los Angeles?
So I actually got a job as with a CPA firm in Beverly Hills, and after 6 months I hated it and I gave it up.
What did you do after that?
Actually, I got a job laying wood floors.
Really?
For a living. Yeah,
That's quite a change.
big change. Yeah. So my father was very hardcore, you know, very disciplinarian kind of guy, and, you know, he basically told me, if you want to go to school, I'll be happy to support you, but once you're out of school and you get a job, you're on your own. And so that was it. But I didn't enjoy accounting at all. And, you know, from my perspective, it's I think in life, you know, you have to find a passion to be successful.
So what was the passion that you found?
You know, I got the job out of laying wood floors out of necessity, but, you know, that kind of got me into what I do today, which is, you know, in the building business and real estate and developing, and, you know, I built my way up from laying wood floors to, you know, becoming a superintendent and building houses, and then doing, you know, residential developments, and so you know, and I love what I do today.
So how did you get to Dallas?
So in the late 1980s, when the SNL crisis hit Dallas, and I guess the whole of Texas, one of our leading banks in California owned a lot of property here, and they said, you know, you should go take a look at, you know, what's for sale there. And we came here and saw this great opportunity.
Okay.
I'll move this chair on my way out.
This one?
Okay, so we were talking about the differences in the cultures between Los Angeles and Dallas, and you were going to tell me a little bit about what you thought in coming here, what was so different about Dallas from Los Angeles, Southern California in general.
So, as we said, it's a much easier place to live. Obviously the people are Southern hospitality, much more friendly. Your dollar goes a lot farther here. And just overall, I think it's just your quality of life is just better here. Much better place for my kids to grow up than being in LA.
Did you find it easy to integrate into the community here in Dallas?
So what I did find moving to Dallas, which was quite interesting, is that the South Africans in a whole kind of stay in different cliques. In Los Angeles and even in Dallas per se. And because when I came to LA in 1976, there were very few South African families in LA. In 1976, I think we tried to have a reunion one year, and I think there was no more than about 10, 12 families that we could find.
Mm-hmm.
And today there's thousands of, and it's pretty normal or natural for, South Africans come here and they reach out to other South Africans but I married an American and fully integrated into, the American society. So when I came to Dallas, I did meet a lot of South Africans, but pretty much integrated more into the American culture than the South African community.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
So your social life is pretty much across the board then in terms of your
Pretty
friendship?
much balanced. I have South African friends and I have American friends.
Is there anything that you have brought with you in terms of South African tradition or culture that you can share with us that you've kind of tried to carry on in your own family?
I think, growing up in South Africa, there was a really strong sense of family. When I grew up, and my father made this a hard rule that you could not miss Friday night dinner.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't care if you were going out afterwards or if you wanted to bring a bunch of your friends, but it was family night. And I think that's, a South African trait, that there's a very strong sense of their family bond, which I see.
Tell me about your nuclear family, your children.
I have 2 children. I have a daughter who's about to be 21 that goes to San Diego State University.
What's her name?
Teal.
Teal.
And I have a son whose name is Tristan, and he just started UT in Austin.
What are they studying?
So my daughter is studying journalism and wants to maybe do something, media studies, or get involved in some type of media. And my son is undeclared, I think, right now.
How did your daughter choose San Diego State? I only ask that because it's my alma mater.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, she's, she just loved the school. When she went there, she visited a bunch of schools, and she got in, and she's not coming back. That's the sad thing.
She's going to stay there.
She's going to stay there. Which I don't blame her.
Oh, I don't blame her either.
It's
She can find the money to support herself in Southern California.
That's.
Yeah.
But Orange County, San Diego is a lot different to Los Angeles. It's not as bad. But no, I'm actually just waiting for her to come home next week.
Uh-huh.
And then she's going to do a semester abroad.
Really?
In
Where's she going to go?
Florence.
In
Yeah,
Florence?
yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I tell you, when I come back, I want to come back as one of my kids.
Yeah, don't blame you.
Huh? Yeah, great life.
Yeah.
Uh,
So, are you involved at all in any communal activities in the Jewish community or elsewhere? Any other community activities?
You know, I would say we're involved, that we support the Jewish community. You know, my wife was on the first Dancing of the Stars that the Aarons put on
Oh,
the very
terrific.
first year, and so we're definitely involved. We go to different functions. We pretty involved with Anshe Torah, with Stefan Weinberg.
Uh-huh.
I actually built the rabbi 2 houses. So
What is the name of your business?
I have different companies.
Mhm.
We build high-end houses under Cooper Homes. We have a company called Camden Homes that we build entry-level houses and develop subdivisions. So
Is there anything else about your, either your memories of life in South Africa that you'd like to tell us about that you think would be important for your children to know as a legacy? Or the transition from South Africa to the United States that you think would be important for them to know? Or anything in terms of values that you'd like to pass on to them?
You know, I think, like I said before, I think that the value that I feel was really instilled in us growing up, especially from my father and my mother, was that sense of family, which I see, unfortunately, when you come to America. You know, in South Africa, you go to high school, you go to college or university in the same town that you live in. You live at home until you get married.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's how it was when I was there. Here, you know, the kids go to high school, they go to college, they want to go as far away from their home as possible. And, you know, there's a 50% chance they're never coming back. So, you know, families here are scattered all over, America. So you kind of lose that bond. Maybe not the bond, but you lose that closeness of being together. Like my daughter, for example. I mean, so she's going to be in California, and my son will probably come back to Texas. You know, so it's, when she has kids, please God, you know, it kind of splinters. Which I find is you know, wouldn't happen if we were living in South Africa.
Anything else that you'd like to share about your personal history?
You know, I feel very fortunate. I mean, I think that I'm very thankful to my father for, for making the decision and sacrificing and bringing us here. And, you know, I think it's, I think that South Africans also have a deeper work ethic than that was instilled in us. You know, you look by and large at the South Africans show that have been very, very successful, and you know, they all work very, very hard. And I think that's something that is also something that was instilled in us growing up in South Africa.
Well, Simmie, I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your busy day and your busy week. This is providing a wonderful legacy not only to your family but to the Dallas community as part of our Roots to Boots project, and we really appreciate your participating with us this morning.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Mhm.